It is done. I have sold all of my ESPP stock, which means that I now have $10,000 just sitting in cash and absolutely no idea what to do with it. Well, actually, that's not true. I see three potential places I could put this money. I could put it into my high yield savings account and continue saving for a house. I could buy more VOO, or I could put that entire $10,000 into Bitcoin. And that last option, I'm telling you, is looking a lot more appealing. So this money came from shares that I've been purchasing through my employee stock purchase plan that I've been buying for the past couple of years, and I've just kind of been holding on to. That is until recently I got some advice from an old friend, and they told me that I was holding way too much of my money in one single stock. So one thing led to another, and here we are today. $10,000 that now needs a new home. And speaking of home, I've already been saving up for a house for a little while now, and another big portion of my ESPP sale has already been transferred into this savings bucket. But this extra $10,000 could be additional money I could use for a down payment. It could be saved up for future renovations. I could use it to buy furniture, or it could cover some of those magically appearing expenses that come up as soon as you become a homeowner. However, I don't plan on buying a house within the next year, and realistically, it's probably going to be at least 2 or 3 years from now. And even then, I'm still not convinced that buying is going to be the right decision for me. The average mortgage rate is something stupid like 6.5%. And once you combine that with home prices, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, closing costs, and repairs, I mean, owning a home can be significantly more expensive than just renting. But I digress. Having this money in savings would definitely give me more flexibility. It would earn a predictable income. It would give me additional money to use for a future down payment if I end up going that route. And there's basically no chance that I'd wake up tomorrow morning and see my savings account down 30%. So that is option one, but it may not be the option with the highest upside. The second option is buying more VOO, which would have to go into my brokerage account. VOO tracks the S&P 500, which would give me exposure into the 500 largest publicly traded companies here in the United States. It's diversified, it's simple, it has low fees, and did I mention boring? Okay, so Bitcoin peaked at roughly 126,000 a coin back in October of last year. Today, it's sitting at around 66,000. That means Bitcoin has lost nearly half of its value from the peak. Now, just because something has fallen 47% doesn't mean it's cheap. An asset can fall 50% and then
another 50 if that's what it takes.
But Bitcoin's current price is significantly more attractive to me than it was when it was up over $100,000. At today's prices, my $10,000 would buy me approximately 0.15 Bitcoin. That means that if Bitcoin eventually returns to 126,000, my $10,000 would turn into $19,000. And if Bitcoin eventually reaches 200,000, my position would be 30 grand. And if Bitcoin eventually reaches $40,000, my $10,000 would quickly turn into $6,000. Oh. But that's not the point. The point is that there is big upside potential with less and less downside risk the lower Bitcoin's price goes. Because I think we're all past the
it is my humble opinion, and there's nothing humble about me, Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
Y'all remember that guy? I swear he makes my ears bleed. Anyways, I think we can all agree now that crypto is here to stay and Bitcoin is becoming a safer investment. And honestly, the big reason for that is All right, so the Clarity Act is an attempt to make a comprehensive regulatory structure surrounding cryptocurrency here in the United States. One of the biggest problems with crypto has been that companies frequently have no idea what rules apply to them. Is a digital asset a security? Is it a commodity? Should the SEC regulate it? Should the CFTC regulate it? Or should we all just hire 20 lawyers and hope for the best? For years now, much of America's crypto policy has been created through lawsuits and enforcement actions rather than clear legislation. And the Clarity Act is allegedly supposed to change that. It would give these traditional financial institutions more confidence that the rules aren't suddenly going to change on them as soon as they enter the market. Banks, investment firms, and other institutions generally don't like regulatory uncertainty. They want to know what they're legally allowed to own, trade, custody, and offer to their customers. So if the Clarity Act indeed passes, it would clear up some of those regulatory uncertainties, and it would allow for these large institutions to start entering the market. And that would probably be positive for Bitcoin over the long term, and honestly, probably over the short term as well. Okay, so the original Clarity Act passed the House in July 2025 by a vote of 294 to 134. And that included 78 Democratic votes, so it received meaningful bipartisan support in the House. The Senate Banking Committee then advanced a heavily amended version in May of 2026. But passing a committee is very different from passing the full Senate. Republicans, who are the primary supporters of this bill, currently control 53 of the 100 Senate seats, and major legislation in the Senate generally needs 60 votes to overcome a filibuster and become law. That means that Republicans will probably need support from at least 7 Democrats or independents. And as of right now, only 2 Democrats supported the legislation during the Senate Banking Committee votes, and even those 2 did not guarantee that they would support the final version on the Senate floor. One of the biggest disputes has involved ethics restrictions related to elected officials and their financial interests in cryptocurrency. However, recent reports suggest that the White House and senators have reached an agreement on an ethics provision, which would remove one of the bill's biggest obstacles. But other disagreements still remain, including questions involving enforcement, anti-money laundering requirements, customer identification, and the exact authority of different regulators. The Senate is also scheduled to leave for its August recess after August 7th, and that makes August 7th the practical deadline everyone is watching. But it is important to understand what that deadline actually means. It doesn't mean that the Clarity Act will automatically die if it fails to pass by August 7th. Congress could still return to it later this year. The only problem with that is that the fall legislative calendar will become very crowded and lawmakers will be approaching their midterm elections. That's going to make passing a large and complicated crypto bill much more difficult. With all that political jargon out of the way, here's what you may or may not have come here for. What's my plan? Scenario 1 is that the Clarity Act passes the Senate before the August 7th deadline. If that happens, I'm going to find it extremely difficult to believe that when it goes back to the House, it's going to fail, and once it goes to the president's desk, he's going to veto it. In my mind, if this thing passes the Senate, it's going to be signed into law very quickly afterwards. So in that case, I'm going to take my $10,000 and buy Bitcoin at whatever price it's at when it passes the Senate vote. Now, the Senate vote passing may or may not actually be a sell the news event. And if I buy Bitcoin as soon as it passes, I could lose a little bit of money. However, once the Clarity Act actually gets signed into law, I'm thinking that Bitcoin's not going to be under $100,000 a coin for very long. And we're probably never going to return to this low of a price ever again. I mean, the United States is the largest economy in the entire world, and opening the floodgates on our institutional investors and all of the money that comes along with that, I can't imagine Bitcoin not going up in value. Scenario 2 is that the Clarity Act does not pass the Senate by August 7th. In that case, I'm going to keep my $10,000 in my high yield savings account and I'm going to watch Bitcoin's price. If Bitcoin stays around $65,000 and starts to rise, then I'm just going to let it go and not chase it. I already have some crypto exposure, so I don't need to FOMO my money to catch a rally that I'm not sure whether or not it's going to last. But if Bitcoin starts to fall below 60K, I'm going to start dollar cost averaging into it. And it'll be something like I'm going to put $2,000 in once it hits 60,000, maybe another 3,000 in if it gets close to the 55,000 mark, and the remaining 5K as it approaches 50,000. I may also just set it up to buy $100 or $200 worth of Bitcoin every single day as soon as it gets below the $60,000 mark. I'm not quite sure yet. And if Bitcoin never reaches those prices, well, then I'm just going to keep the money in my high yield savings accounts and save it for a future down payment, like my plan was going to be anyway. And I could always take this money out of my high yield savings account and invest it into Bitcoin at a later date. Maybe after the midterm elections and the Senate is back talking about the Clarity Act and it's looking more likely that it's going to pass and Bitcoin's price is at an attractive point, I can always invest then. I just have a very strong conviction that once the Clarity Act passes the Senate and gets signed into law, crypto is going to be a very good place to have your money. And obviously, not all of your money. Me personally, I've got plenty of other investments. I've got money in the S&P 500. I've got cash. I've got other investments. So not all my money is in crypto anyway, just making that clear. But let me know down below in the comments what you guys think of my plan. Is it good? Is it garbage? Let me know. And if you guys have been watching the Clarity Act and have plans of purchasing cryptocurrency or have a position already built, let me know that as well. But that's going to do it for me here today. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, maybe leave it a like, leave it a subscribe. Really appreciate it. But stay safe out there, everybody. Take care. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.